This is the river Ganges, one of India's most important lifelines. In Hinduism, it's considered a sacred river, said to have mythical, purifying and healing powers. For Hindus, the Ganges is the heart of every spiritual pilgrimage, even after death. It's the wish of many to have their bodies bathed in the river after they pass and cremated right by the shore. After the cremation, the ashes are given to the Ganges. These are Damon, Albarn and Jamie Hewlett. One of them musician and producer, the other one illustrator and comic artist. But they are mostly known for 4 other faces: 2D, Murdoc, Noodle and Russel. The virtual band Gorillaz. For 3 decades now, the two have been active as a band together. Damon Albarn, who used to be the frontman of the Britpop band Blur, handles the musical side of things, production and vocals, while Jamie Hewlett creates the visual side. He designed the fictional members and has drawn and animated them in countless images, music videos and graphic novels. Thematically, it's usually about social commentary, consumerism, environmental destruction, politics, or the rotting of our minds. But in 2024, something tragic happened in their own worlds. Within just 10 days, both of them lost their fathers. The two longtime friends and creative partners traveled to India together, a unique experience that had a massive impact on them both. The whole trip became their search for a way to deal with loss, and they discovered a new perspective on death. They turned this entire experience into an art project, their latest album, The Mountain. The Mountain is Gorillaz' first album since the 2023 album Cracker Island and is already the 9th studio album of this band. And in all those years they experimented with so many different sounds, but still this album feels like something completely new and interesting. At first it feels like a classic Gorillaz record. A detailed production with a long track list and a huge cast of features, all contributing their own parts to the work. As I mentioned, the album is heavily inspired by the trip to India. Thematically, but also musically. Fitting the themes, Albarn uses a lot of elements from classical Indian music here. Alongside electronic drums and synths, the sitar and the Indian Bansuri are the most important instruments on the album. Damon Albarn's signature filtered vocals and poppy instrumentals blend masterfully with flute melodies and plucked instruments. And we get long, hypnotic intros and meditative sounds. In this album we have obvious influences of the 2010 album Plastic Beach, since a couple of the songs are actually leftovers from the recording sessions of Plastic Beach. Plastic Beach is my personal favorite from Gorillaz, and you can really hear the influences on this new album. We have a warm sound that often sounds super happy, even though the themes actually aren't. Songs sometimes evolve into epic finals, or are danceable from start to finish, when they're not being completely melancholic of course. And a huge selection of collaborators makes this album extremely diverse. Musically, but also culturally. Besides English, you can hear Hindi, Arabic, Spanish and the West African Yoruba. There are 25 different performers listed as guest features. 7 of them come directly from classical Indian music. They are the musical backbone of this album. But there are also several English artists from the UK and the US, 2 from Argentina and Omar Soleiman from Syria, who blessed us with an Arabic-infused banger. But what's really important to mention is that 6 of them have already passed away. Death and reincarnation are very important themes for The Mountain. The Hindu approach to death is quite different from the Western world. Gorillaz consciously traveled to India to experience a different viewpoint on death, but also on life itself. In Hinduism, death isn't a final conclusion, but a transition. Atman, the soul, is immortal and simply changes bodies after death. That's samsara, the eternal circle of rebirth. Death is the necessary getaway for a new beginning. Besides the pain, the life of the deceased is celebrated here. And there's hope that they will find their moksha. Because of that, many songs on the album are intentionally based on unused materials from artists we have lost. Actor Dennis Hopper, Bobby Womack, Dave Jolicoeur from the legendary hip-hop group De La Soul, Afrobeat legend Tony Allen, Proof, and Mark E. Smith have all recorded their parts in the last 20 years on leftovers that were never used till today. Some might call it disrespectful to use recordings of deceased artists, but I think there's nothing more respectful than being part of an album that celebrates this kind of infinity. Through this album, their legacy lives on. We can hear them forever, communicating with us beyond the grave. They all share a passion for music, and in that music they live on eternally. The album also shows us the life we will live, and how hard it can be. The mountain in the mountain is a metaphor for the journey of life. When you start to climb, the path is wide and full of possibilities, but the higher you get, the narrower, harder and lonelier the path becomes. But once you've reached the end, the peak of the mountain, you are ready for the transition into something new. What the album achieves is expressing infinity, for the legends who've passed, but also for the ones that are still with us. And they do it with some really great music.